I would like to invite the speakers of the second panel. Please, Kamran Aghayev, Head of Data and Management Department of IDDA. Zixin Lin, Regional Lead for Central Asia and South Caucasus region, Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Chubak Temirov, Deputy Director, High Technology Park of the Kyrgyz Republic. And Temur Khisamutdinov, Director of the IT Park Dushanbe under the Agency for Innovations and Digital Technologies under the President of the Republic of Tajikistan. To moderate the panel, I would like to invite Anatoly Motkin, President of StrategEast. Thank you.
Good morning. I thank you for coming and being here with us for the second day. We're talking about a region that to bring together, we decided to adopt the term of Central Eurasia, which means basically Caucasus and Central Asia, all 8 countries. And here we have with us on the stage people who are actually shaping the landscape in this region. And also it's up to them to decide to what degree the collaboration between these countries and collaboration with the international players like the big tech companies and the international financial institutions and other contributors and the governments would work. And the role of the big tech companies is quite decisive in many cases. They deliver not only technologies and infrastructure, they also deliver the knowledge. And the knowledge transfer is one of the most important things that actually brings here not only technical skills to the region, but also the delivery skills. It trains people how to be able to communicate in international markets and not only domestically. And the first round of questions, I'll start with the big tech. So how can Central Eurasian nations work with big tech companies? Actually, how it impacts their digital sovereignty. But when we talk about big tech companies, we're talking not only about the vendors, we're talking also about the engineering companies, those who physically create jobs in those countries. So I'll start with Temur, Head of the IT Park in Tajikistan, please.
Well, thank you. First of all, I would like not all countries in the region are developing the same way. And if we discuss about the sovereignty, sovereignty is not isolation, and control doesn't mean cutting ourselves off. I think collaboration with the big tech should be based on the shared growth. For example, in Tajikistan, we digital sovereignty not as a separation, but as a balanced partnership, where the global companies help us to local talents, data infrastructure, and innovation ecosystem. And so that when we work with the big tech, we do so as informed partners, not as passive users. And also we understand that we can bring R&D centers yet, but we can build a foundation for the deeper collaboration in the future, and step by step going from the outsourcing to innovation way.
Thank you. And over to you, Kamran. Here in Azerbaijan, we see international players who are present for some time. Some of them started working here just recently. Could you please just tell us how it works here?
Yeah, first of all, I would like digital sovereignty is state's ability to maintain control over its data, over its digital infrastructure, technologies, and digital states of its citizens. So Azerbaijan actively collaborate, and we have a huge collaboration with big tech companies here in Azerbaijan, but in locally managed way and in a sovereign environment. So what I mean by sovereign environment, I would like to mention the government cloud. So G-Cloud initiative was approved and signed by President of Azerbaijan back in 2019. So we cooperate with big tech companies here in Azerbaijan. We use their platforms, we use their products, but of course in a sovereign environment like in G-Cloud. So in the act of the G-Cloud, there were like lots of action plans, and the main aim was to create a robust, a scalable, a secure and shared environment for all government offices. And one of the main action plan was to have all IT infrastructure that are available in government offices to migrate to G Cloud and to be centralized. So the main aim is to keep the data in a sovereign environment, in a cloud, in a local cloud, and process that data in a local cloud environment. So we have an operational team, we have a local engineering team who actually support that environment. Beside working with big tech companies and using their products and platforms, we also work with companies like international companies to build a platform and product here in Azerbaijan. So, for example, I would like to talk about especially the MyGov application, MyGov platform, which is a digital government platform for Azerbaijan citizens. The MyGov platform it acts like a bridge between the government and between the citizens and provide an ability and accessibility to the personal information of the citizens. So we are collaborating with the EPAM on this project, and we decided to we are building now with the support and EPAM an e-advisory, agentic-based e-advisory platform, which is an AI-based platform, in order to help citizens to get the answers to their questions, not just the answers, but to help the citizens support to get the help on personalized services. In the first stage, we are planning to have, currently we have a chatbot which actually answers the questions of citizens in more detail. Based on digital development concept that also was approved in the beginning of this year by Mr. President, we are helping and supporting different government offices to build their digital environment and to digitalize, as well as we help them to build like roadmap for AI and data-driven use cases. So that's why I see that some government offices like create a chatbot to help the citizens to answer questions using the cloud-based OpenAI. So as long as this FAQ is publicly available, that's okay. But whenever it comes to get a personalized service for the citizens, we are using, we already started like training, but we are planning to use the GPUs that is already available in G Cloud. So we are planning to have a local LLM, and we already started this project with our internal team and with support of EPAM to have a local large language model trained in order to help citizens to get a personalized answers to their requests and services. And at the end of the day, we are planning to build an e-advisory agentic AI-based platform that will help citizens to implement a life event like birth, like marriage, like death. So whenever a new child is born, a citizen will apply necessary information to that agentic AI, and that agentic AI will communicate with all government offices and ministries in the background and will do everything for that citizen. So overall, as a recap, I can say that we have a huge collaboration with big tech companies, but of course in a locally managed and in a sovereign environment.
Thank you. And over to you, Zixin. We know that the Tony Blair Institute explores how it works from technological perspective in the region, not only. So how do you think, first, how the whole region, do you think, looks from perspective of the global tech? And what is the interaction that you see from your position?
Yeah, thanks, Kamran, for defining sovereignty. I think the key point to frame this conversation is also that sovereignty and control are two different words. And when we think about sovereignty in the region, we can't think of total control. What's important is that as we look at the tech stack, from compute, data, models, applications, energy, talent, and skills, which layer can each nation in Eurasia strategically try and tackle and steer so that they can maximize their strategic latitude, as you mentioned. And actually on this front, I know when we mention big tech, it sounds indomitable, it sounds formidable. What are each of these mid-sized markets in Eurasia? What do they count for when they're up against big tech? But actually, I do think there is a lot of power in the nations in Eurasia to set the terms of how they want to collaborate with big tech. And in negotiating these conditions for market access, there can be a lot of benefits and returns reaped to the sort of sovereignty principles and priorities that each country wants. You mentioned a little bit about knowledge and tech transfer. That's a super important one. Open API frameworks, localized data centers, making sure that you can maintain that flexibility to ensure that you're not locked into one particular vendor and to have more control over your data governance. But at the same time, I think even as you look within each layer, there's a lot of room for a more nuanced position to be taken. For example, we look at data governance. That's often seen as one of the key strategic layers that nations try to retain some control over. But what is data? Actually, data can be broken down into several layers and classifications too. There will be certain non-negotiable data types that you want to retain total control over. Maybe that's electoral data, security data, but there are also several other tiers of data where you can liberalize your approach towards, say, in energy, finance, education, health, and being able to have a clear-eyed vision of this nuanced approach and making that clear to big tech partners, I think is super important. I mentioned the word clarity because I think it's not about being totally liberal or totally in control, but it's about setting clear rules, setting clear priorities in your data governance framework and plans in order for big tech to understand who you are as a nation and your priorities and how they can plug into that. And that then forms a very critical foundation for that trusted relationship where you're not in a transactional dynamic, but instead thinking about how you co-develop this ecosystem together and how you can ensure that both parties come off better for it.
Thank you. And Chubak, over to you. In Kyrgyzstan, the IT industry started developing from bottom up. It means that the initiative came from the businessmen and from the people and from the society, and not as a demand from the government. With that, the government also shapes the landscape by working with NVIDIA on one hand, and I just seen in the social networks that the private company in Kyrgyzstan also developed a LLM model of Kyrgyz language, emotional LLM model. So please share with us how it works in Kyrgyzstan and what's your view on and the collaboration will come later. But you work with big vendors like NVIDIA, you work with the international engineering companies. How it works?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank for bringing us at one stage here in Baku. Answering your question, I can say that companies, big tech companies like EPAM Systems, for example, make a great shape in our country. You're very right that Kyrgyz Republic approach is a bit different. So usually, as you know, the companies go in the countries up and down, but in our country, it's bottom from up. So we do trust a lot in our communities. We have a lot of communities, including the AI community, that just recently launched the model, which is open source. And if we talk about the digital sovereignty from this side, I can say that it goes two ways, from the government side and from the private side. And Kyrgyzstan chose the way in here as a open transformation, open digital transformation, I would say. And the High Technology Park, I think, is also a great example of this, on how government and the private companies are working together to reach this digital sovereignty. And for our country, digital sovereignty is not about isolation, but it's all about cooperation between different parties, between the government officials, the private companies, the government, and the different even NGOs and the donor organizations that support our transformation in our country. From the perspective of big tech companies, I can say that, for example, EPAM is making a great difference in our country. As you know, the big tech companies usually have their own educational initiatives. For example, EPAM Campus. They are teaching a lot of engineers in our country, as you mentioned in the very beginning, about bringing capacity and bringing knowledge to the region. That's how big tech can help to make our country better. And from this sense, they're doing a lot of difference by teaching thousands of engineers to English, to engineering skills, and they are employing them, and all others are just going to the market. So they are empowering, not just replacing some of our developers. And obviously, out of the EPAM, we are trying to bring other big tech companies. And this is, from one side, is a kind of, for us, one of the top priorities. So EPAM is one example. The other example is Netcracker. They also, now we are in collaboration with them to teach the next generation of specialists in some specific fields as OSS, BSS technologies, and they're also making a great change, and we are trying to bring other big tech companies to our region.
The issue of sovereignty, how does it look like? You talk also with the government, and the government are also at your board at the IT park, right? High Technologies Park in Kyrgyzstan. So is this an issue at all in Kyrgyzstan? Like if these technologies actually impact the sovereignty of the country?
You mean technologies that are brought from other countries? Yeah. For example, it's not about the big tech companies, but it's about collaboration of our government with other, let's say, countries. So, for example, our platform, the national platform Tunduk, is actually was brought as an X-Road from Estonia. So that's a great example of our collaboration. So Estonians actually helped us to make the platform the basis of our today's national system. And as you can see, this is a kind of dilemma, right? From one side, it's all about our own sovereignty. From the other side, is getting the best practices of the world. And I think we used it in a wise way. So we get let's say, the basis and just build it. So from the government side, Kyrgyzstan was actually preparing for digital transformation last 5-6 years. Starting from 2016, when the World Bank was helping, just in general, there was a product, Digital Casa, that was spread across the region through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, helping them to make the broadband network, so to cover the internet coverage, so we can get the better digital sovereignty. And that project actually made a great progress. And from the perspective of X-Road, the best example of Estonia, we built the whole, let's say, backside, which is not seen for the citizens. And starting from 2021, 22, we started to actually provide services to the citizens, and now they can see the big difference. They're using the services, and from day to day, these services are just becoming as a super app. And I think here we already built this great medium between the, let's say, the help from other countries, new technologies, and from the other side, the local players actually just enlarged it and they make it more sovereign for our country.
Thank you. And if we could, Temur, back to you. When we're talking about Central Eurasia, we always feel that it's easier to promote the entire region and to define it as a trusted IT destination rather than to sell country by country. And what the advantages you see in a regional collaboration for Tajikistan and how it works, how you...
Thank you for the question. If we discuss about the regional cooperation, to accelerate a cross-border digital transformation, I think we need to build the regional bridges to work together, and a network of IT parks and digital international hubs across the Central Eurasia can connect startups, researchers, and investors for joint projects. We need predictable rules and shared standards across the region, and as well the big tech should help us to grow roots, not only just install cables. Yes, and in my view, if our countries in Central Eurasia can harmonize our policy on data and AI and in digital governments, the big tech will see us not as several small market, but as one as a centralized ecosystem. I think it will be better, and it's ways to be do a best regional cooperation for us in the region.
Thank you. And Zixin, if we could take it over to you. When you analyze the progress in digital or economic development of the countries of Central Asia and Caucasus, what do you think could be the incentives for each country to work with others and to promote the joint brand of the entire region, but also how these collaborations actually support them? How do you see it? How you analyze it?
Yeah, I think there's a very strong brand story to be told for the region. It's already emerging as the new crossroads of trade and talent. I guess the next brand story to be told and to be discussed between the countries of the region is how then do you become a data corridor or an AI corridor? And I mean, I would like to pose a question actually to my fellow panelists, not to steal your role, Anatoly, but currently over 66% of AI governance frameworks originate from Western Europe and North America, which also means that the norms are being set by countries that are quite far, not just geographically, but also culturally and historically from countries in the region. I personally think there's a lot of room for countries here in this region to set their own norms, set their own rules, set their own frameworks. For example, ASEAN, the Association for Southeast Asian Nations, has their regional AI governance and ethics framework. The African Union has its own governance framework for data as well. So does the EU. It has a EU AI policy. To me, there's a lot of room, and the obvious sort of next step is that there can be cooperation between Eurasian countries to think of what a regional AI governance ethics framework could look like, something that's informed by local cultural norms. I mean, notwithstanding that there's obviously a lot of diversity in the region, but something a bit more localized to here.
But you think that, I understand where does it come from when you talk about the ethical AI and so on and so forth? Because it's actually something that is being discussed widely in the EU. And when we're talking about Caucasus as a part of Eastern Partnership Initiative, so it's more discussed here rather than in Central Asia, because there was initially out of scope. But you think that also this norm and if those countries should also discuss how they adopt the legislation as a regional norm, or still it should be negotiated and would be easier to be negotiated country by country?
Definitely as a regional bloc. I think the key to working with big corporate partners is that you want as much predictability and standardization as possible, so that, I think as Temur mentioned, you're not looked at as individual mid-sized markets for which the investment might not have a clear ROI, but rather as a regional bloc with shared standards, with shared rules. Then you raise clarity, you raise predictability, and that then lowers the barrier to entry for this.
And I'll add another question as a follow-up. When you think on Europe and you think about digital single market, and we see that some countries which are not EU members, like Ukraine, Moldova, they still negotiate how to join this digital single market. And do you think it's negotiable at all to think of regions which are not initially part of Europe on the map to become part of Europe as a digital partners, or to some degree of digital partnership, and to get access to the market, but in exchange to allow to Europe to have wider access to their own digital market?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to speak on that matter, but I'd love to hear from, I think, the IT park directors from their actual countries who have been a bit more in the room when it comes to these discussions.
I mean, what might be the incentive for Europe? And we will ask what might be the incentive for them. What do you think?
Sorry, okay.
What might be the incentive for Europe to give a broader access for Central Eurasian tech market to a European digital market?
I mean, it's an incredibly dynamic region with young, multilingual, mobile diaspora. So there's already, I think, that impetus and existing foundations for interregional cooperation and interregional interoperability. So those conditions, I think, are a bit more facilitative than how you might think of Europe. I mean, we think of Europe as a bloc, but actually there's also a lot of diversity there. So I do think there are several factors here that are quite unique to Eurasia that would be quite appealing as opposed to another region.
Terrific, thank you. And Chubak, now it's your turn to talk about the collaboration or cross-regional collaboration. So we know that Kyrgyzstan was maybe the first country that started developing the IT industry, even before Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. But it's true that when they started investing major efforts in developing their IT ecosystem, they closed the gap, I mean, in terms even of experts, quite fast, because the scale of the economy is bigger in both, right? But still, we see that in international events, both Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan started working together, even holding joint stands. And first, how you see Kyrgyzstan part of this regional collaboration? Second, if you envision that Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, but also Caucasus could also act as a single unit. And again, you're visiting GITEX in Dubai, you're coming to other international events, Web Summit, and so forth. What are the advantages of working together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think to answer your question, let's see the other perspective that now there is a big competition between different regions. So we see from one side the Latam region, from the other side the MENA region, and all other regions are now more or less united. You mentioned about the European Union that at some point causing problems to the Central Eurasian countries to enter, right? And I think from this perspective, Central Asia and the Caucasus can and should be a region. I think last 4 or 5 years, we did big progress in actually being united. Before, as you mentioned at one of our conversations, it was more like on the paper. So there was just the talks that we should unite, we should do the things, but in reality, there was no any integration. But now we see the world is changing, AI is changing all the rules, and now I think this is a great opportunity to actually be united. And I think and here I can bring the great examples. For example, you mentioned about the joint initiatives of our neighboring countries, Astana Hub and IT Park of Uzbekistan. So they decided to unite in few things, in joining forces in developing startup ecosystem. So they actually bring their own startups to different international platforms. And from the other side, it's a joint promotion of their countries on international arena. And there are like a bunch of great examples when they made the joint initiatives, I think. And Kyrgyzstan was actually invited to join this trio as a third park. And in a broader term, they have a goal to unite all Central Asian and Caucasus countries under this single so-called Silk Road Innovation Hub. Yeah, we see a great perspectives. I think the things are, let's say, on the shoulder. Let's say we are thinking on the term that it might be different, but we definitely understand that we should unite in this sense, because joint forces of promoting the region as a single unit is obviously a big asset. Here I can say that all parks will definitely have a competition in terms of smaller companies. As you know, smaller companies always have a limited capacity and they will choose one country out of these countries. But if we talk about the big tech companies, they have the capacity, they have the sources to be in every single country. And the EPAM, I think, is a great example. They are present in all stands in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. I think they are not yet in Tajikistan, but who knows, maybe they will be in there as well. So here I want to say that from our side, we are more or less ready to join, at least in the case of promotion, the technoparks together. I said earlier that branding is now a question for us. I mean, the naming of the brand. But in general, the initiatives is really great. From that, I can also say the different perspective. So, for example, if big tech companies will come even to Kazakhstan and not to Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan, it's still a great plus for the entire region because they bring expertise, they bring a great big, let's say, interest of American and European companies to Kazakhstan and to grow the whole region. And from these perspectives, yes, obviously, this is all related to promotion of the countries. My view on that we should collaborate. From the other perspectives, I can say for sure that we're already exchanging startups. So it's already not on the paper, but actually in action. So, for example, just recently we did from our side initiative to be at Astana Hub Digital Bridge, their biggest forum, and on IT Parks Uzbekistan ICT Week to act as a partner, as a single unit, and be on their forum as an exhibitor, bringing Kyrgyz companies. So this is our initiatives of integration. So we want to bring ourselves, our companies, to the region. And from the exchange of startups, I mentioned that we have great examples. So, for example, our startups are already joining some incubators and accelerators in Azerbaijan. Just recently, some of our startups were invited by Salah Hub, participated, and thanks for our brothers. So we see already this exchange of startups. And the same goes to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Kyrgyz startups are actually participating in Google for Startups in Kazakhstan, in initiatives of IT Park Uzbekistan. From the perspective of Kyrgyzstan, we are doing our programs more for the local ones. Let's say we're just testing because we don't have that much of investments like our neighbors. And but we're also thinking to open to our neighboring countries. For example, the program with MIT. Recently, Kyrgyzstan launched a program with MIT Core Sharper, the program that is dedicated to deep tech technologies. And the results were really great. And we are thinking of adding more startups from other countries, because if you talk about the big tech, not the big tech, if you talk about the deep tech technologies, we can count them on fingers. In Kyrgyzstan, just only a few, in Kazakhstan 4 or 5, and that's the reason that we should make broader and bring the best ones to this program so they can benefit and close one of the biggest challenges of creating more unicorns, bringing more attention of international companies to our arena, to Central Asian region. Thank you.
Thank you. And when we're talking about collaborations, it's not necessarily only about a cross-country collaboration. It's also about collaboration between governments, academia, the private sector. And I will address this question to you, Temur. Like how, in your case, governments, academia, and the private sector should join efforts to develop AI capacity and also the digital infrastructure in the countries?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Talk about the infrastructure capacity. AI and digital infrastructure growth based from the collaboration between government, academia, and private sector. It's like a triple helix model. And we, with the support of our government, we have passed a law in the AI and digital infrastructure. I would like to point out some successful cases in this way. Tajikistan broke new ground in 2022 by adopting its national AI strategy to 2030, the region's first long-term strategy, and making it both of the earliest Central Asia state to commit to a dedicated AI policy framework. And on July 2025, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously adopted a historical resolution entitled "The Role of the Artificial Intelligence in Creating New Opportunities for Sustainable Development in Central Asia," initiated by the Republic of Tajikistan. This regulatory act laid the foundation for the building AI capability in our country. And we are, if talk about IT parks and about the Agency of Innovation. We created it 1 year ago, and IT Park is started only in April. Working in April this year, and we are creating now a huge ecosystem for these AI technologies and in IT sector totally. And we think we can, with our neighbor countries, also share our big things and can do something like how our friend Chubak says, to connect our IT parks to bring future in future. Yes, I think so.
Thank you. And when we're talking about this type of collaboration, sometimes it's based on open source solutions. And I'll address this question to you, Kamran, about the open source strategy for GovTech solutions here in Azerbaijan.
Yeah. First of all, before talk about open source, I would like to add some comments to the Mrs. Lin regarding the AI governance and data governance, especially. So this year, in March 19th, our government signed the national AI strategy for the country, and we have lots of action plans regarding the creating an AI framework for the entire country. Regarding the data governance, that's also a good point. 2 years ago, World Bank made an assessment in our country and different government offices, and based on this assessment, our value was like in a growing stage, right? So that's a good point. And from that point, we started creating a legal document about the data governance as well. So it took almost 2 years for us as a ministry to create that document and share it with the government offices and get an approval from the government offices. And I hope that in the next year, in a few months, this document also will be approved by the government. So we will do a lot of things regarding the data governance in the government offices. So this is the first point. Regarding the open source movement, or how we can call it, in October 21st, 2020, European Commission approved an open source software strategy for the next 4 years, right? And the main aim for this strategy is to not to push, but to make the government offices to move from the enterprise systems to the open sources. For example, as I mentioned in my previous answer regarding the e-advisory solution, so we are building the e-advisory solution with the EPAM, and most of the platforms, that products that we are use are totally open source. So then we have a plan like open source first. So we are, based on digital development concept, we are making an assessment of the platforms of government offices and their IT infrastructure. And what we see that most of the government offices using the enterprise solution, when it is really possible actually to use the open source for that particular case. So we made an assessment and we build a roadmap for them and help them to move from the enterprise to the open source, because it actually reduced the costs, right? We saved millions and millions for the last few years by migrating our system to the open source, and this is like coming from the international experience as well. And of course, the main thing is like the vendor lock. So by having the source of the platform that we are using, and by knowing the source, and even as we can make necessary change to that source, it is really helpful to use the open source instead of the enterprise systems.
Thank you. And over to you, Zixin, about the public-private partnership between academia, government, and the private sector to develop the local AI capacity. How you think it should work?
Yeah, I think in order to align incentives, government and big tech need to not just co-share benefits and returns, but also co-share risk. So I think it's important as a nation to first set out what your risk appetite is in that area before you explore the various models of public-private partnership, whether that involves joint ventures into digital infrastructure and so on.
And Chubak, we'll ask you the same. Yeah, how it works in your case, and what do you think could be improved there in Kyrgyzstan, and based also on your international experience? How the public-private partnership between the academia, the universities, basically, the government, the private sector should work. And again, when we're talking about the private sector, it's both local companies and internationals.
Question is great, but I think it's easier to say again in words how they should work, but not in reality, because it's a very hard process. So when they can work simultaneously and in a, let's say, single mode. In our country, I think, if to talk about Kyrgyzstan, they're a bit spreaded, not acting as a single. And I think this is one of the problems in our country, because the government is doing one thing, the private sector did the other, the academia is a third thing. And it's a bit hard from this perspective to actually gain a real value. Now, as a high technology park, being a bridge, we are trying to actually make more closer connections. So at least by creating the roadmaps. So the government has its own roadmap, and now we are trying to add to this roadmap the private sector, so it can be coincided, and the academia. Within the academia, we're trying to create this technoparks within the academia, so they can be more closer to the industry. Because as you know, now academia and the private sector are just working in different dimensions. So the academia already forget that they're actually preparing specialists for the industry. And that's one of the, I think, the biggest challenges, I think, in our country. By trying to answer short to your question, it's really hard from different perspectives, and I cannot say in a straight way and how they should work closely. But we can see from different perspectives, as I said, by a few examples, that we are trying different initiatives so they can work together as a single unit. Now we also have a challenge of the country to actually count the number of specialists in the industry, because when big tech companies come, obviously they do their own research, and in most cases their research is better at some point. But from on the national level, we cannot say the exact number. And here we can see that we should work even more with academia, with government, with private sector, to actually, in real time, to count at least the number of engineers. So we are trying to use wisely and use better the data that we already collected, trying to be more like a data-driven government, and so our solutions can be data-driven rather than just simultaneously that we are, just random in most cases. Even with the smart cities, the same tendency. Since the most decisions were not data-driven, we see some problems even in the management of the city, for example. And hopefully in upcoming few years can precisely and smoothly answer your question how we should when we will solve actually this day-to-day challenges that we are facing now in different fields, on the government level, in the private level, in the academia. So we are still now working on creating this great model when all these different parties can work as a single unit for greater digitalization and efficiency.
Yeah, I actually feel that industry has a much closer finger on the pulse of the direction in which the AI developments are heading towards than academia. I used to work in higher education, so I hope I can say that with some authority. And it's often the case where, however robustly you try to design a curriculum, you're usually 5 years behind what industry actually needs and what the digital development trajectory is heading towards. The best data you can get to close that feedback loop is, again, 5 years behind when you look at your employment data of your graduates. And so it's so important to involve industry, people who are actually closer to how the market's working, upstream rather, and be able to co-design that curriculum together.
Yeah, I agree with you. As in Kyrgyzstan and other countries, when it comes to professional trainings, so they do take practitioners from the companies who train those students basically on the principles of, like, of what they implement on day-to-day work. And it's important to have people whose, let's say, main job is to code and not to teach. So they bring their real life experience. But I think that maybe in the United States, it's less like it's different, let's say. People who teach in Berkeley, maybe in Stanford, they do come from the real industry. So the question is, if you need to, in the traditional way, to confirm curricula, then maybe you're lagging. If you just bring in as you said, in advance people who are the industry, it's easier. But still, we're talking here about how the nations could complement big tech. We know that it's not easy today to compete with those $1 trillion companies, right? So it's easy to become $1 billion startup, but it's not easy still to get the same part of the cake and to compete with big tech companies. But should the countries try to somehow to balance the impact of those companies in their own territory? And if it's actually they do not by definition lose part of their sovereignty by losing rights on proprietary private data of their citizens. So what should the countries care about? What do you think when they invite these big companies to come to their countries and to be active there? And what actually is inevitable? What do you think? Chubak, maybe over to you, and then Chubak, you can.
Yeah. You raised a great conversation and question. So I think there should be, like you said, a balance. So from one side, yeah, we are benefiting from all the efforts and the new technologies that are bringing us the big tech companies. But from the other side, we also should take care of our own sovereignty. On our example, I can say that we just recently actually created the agency on the intellectual property and not on the intellectual property, on actually the digital on data protection agency. Sorry, yeah. And that agency is actually now acts as a government organization that actually protect the nation's data. Now we have certain rules that all the data should be, the data center should be in the country, and we used to actually locate our own data in worldwide, on Google Cloud and in other regions. And now after creation of this agency, so most of the organizations started to migrate to local data centers. And I think that's a balance. So we are still using the G Cloud. So the recently government actually created their own G Cloud platform. So adding more sovereignty to our country, but still like balancing, using the technologies of Google Cloud and others, and actually balancing between the local, having the data in the country, but still using the technologies of others, like answering your question in broad. And also have a comment on the thing that you mentioned about the Berkeley and other top universities and how they actually teaching. We should actually learn from this experience because in our country we used to do this approach. So, for example, just the practitioners are teaching in private some courses or university, but the reality shows that it's not the best practice because not always practitioners can be a good teachers. So the theory is still needed at some point, and this is another challenge for us because it's good when practitioners teach from the perspective of industry and what they actually will do, but from the other side we also should teach them how to teach. So TOT, the right TOT, the best examples of this, MIT, Berkeley, is needed here, and this is another challenge that we are facing and we have to resolve to better prepare young IT specialists in our country.
But the problem, I just brief remark before Kamran. In private universities in the US, they have sufficient funds actually to compensate those efforts from people who come from the private sector. In your case, your universities do not have enough money to pay a salary to people who get paid by the private sector. So we need to find this formula as well. And as we have, let's say, less donors recently, it's a challenge for agencies like yes. Please, Kamran.
Yeah, just wanted to add one comment that Chubak has mentioned that, sometimes it's really hard, even if you have a problem, it's really hard to use the products and platforms of the big tech companies because the data is very sensitive. For example, last year, we decided to start a project which was called Nationwide Data Cleansing Project. So based on digital development concept, we made an assessment to the government offices, and we saw that most of the data were not clean. And while having the dirty data, it was really impossible to provide a good service at least over the MyGov platform. So we decided to start a nationwide data cleaning program, and we investigated some platforms and products, and even the vendor support as well. So we saw that most of the platforms were built on the cloud. So you have to transfer your data to the cloud and to create a profiling. For the profiling and for the cleansing, you have to transfer your data to the cloud, right? So, transferring the sensitive data is not possible, right? So then we decided to work with those companies at least to get some support, not from the technical perspective, not from the platform perspective, but from the technical perspective, because they already have that kind of experience. And we saw that even if we try to cooperate with them, we have to share the data. So they must see our data and they must play with it in order to clean it. So even if you don't give them access over the network, even if they will come to your office, it is not permissible for them to see that data. So that's why that was really a blocking issue. So we ended up deciding that, okay, we're gonna do it by ourselves. So it took 1 year, and during the last 1 year, we were able to clean more than 24 million citizen records in 14 government offices. So, why I'm raising this issue, we can use the platforms and products of the big tech companies. We must use them, right? But again, it's sometimes there are lots of blocking issues when it comes to processing and managing data in their cloud.
But Kamran, as a follow-up to what you just said, it's not only about the proficiency of those who develop the platforms, it's also about the literacy of those who utilize it.
Exactly.
So how did you resolve this issue in Azerbaijan for civil servants with their digital literacy to be able to operate it?
Yeah, that's also important case. So as an IDDA, we help government offices to raise the digitalization awareness. So we have lots of programs in that track. So one of the main programs is 2-day digital academy program that happens twice in a year, right? So we gather all responsible persons from the digitalization, from government offices. And most of the time we go to the regions and we stay there for 2 days. We don't limit us just to teach and raise the awareness. We also invite the persons and the responsible persons from the different governments to share their experience. For example, most of the time we have a contract with Estonia. Persons who are responsible from the digitalization of Estonia, they really help us, even not just online, even in those 2 days inside the Digital Academy program. And we are doing lots of plannings, etc. And at the end of the day, we see that the awareness is raised in all officers of these government offices.
Yeah, I was speaking to the former president of Estonia, Toomas Ilves, and he told me that they resolved the issue of digital literacy of the population in a very simple way. They actually threw it on the private sector. They said that each bank has to have its branch in each settlement or in each city, in each village. But it could be replaced by a computer in case everybody in this village knows how to use it. So actually, they put the computer and they said, now you need to teach these people who live there how to use the technology. Okay. And it worked out. Yeah. Thank you. And Zixin, over to you. Let's compare the best practices, not to reinvent the wheel, the best practices in Europe in this balance between the big tech and their interests and the public interest and how the government there try to balance it.
I think to start with, there's a very clear-eyed thinking around what the guardrails should be. And this very early thinking around, before we get outpaced by AI development, which is astronomical in its pace, how do we already start thinking about ensuring that we safeguard human interests, safeguard ethics? And I think oftentimes that conversation is missing at the country level. Unless you very proactively convene platforms and push forth this conversation, it doesn't happen because everyone is just trying to catch up with the AI race. So I think platforms such as these, platforms between countries and C5, for example, which meet very regularly, this has to be put on the table as something that you proactively try to shape the norms of. And that then sets you on the right foundation to negotiate with big tech. Otherwise, you will just be informed and guided by their norms and their corporate interests.
Thank you. And Chubak, if we will ask what is the role of the government in case of Kyrgyzstan? You told us about Tunduk as a platform. We know also that many people in the government, the former Minister of Digital Development, she came from Tunduk, right, Kutnaeva? And now the new minister, what is the role of the governmental offices in shaping this policy? And do they have strategy, or each ministry actually acts only on the sector that it's responsible for?
I think the new ministry have a clear now the strategy. So here I can say that the government is now having like a more united strategy. So the government now united all government IT companies at 2 single companies. So they actually reorganized all the previous IT companies. So before it was a bit different story. So every single government ministry used to have their own IT departments. Like a big IT staff and management, so within each ministry. But now government, as I said, united in 2 big organizations. One is Kazmat, which is a combination of all IT companies at a single point. So they are responsible for the whole, let's say, technical work of the whole projects of the country. From the other side, we have the Open Joint Stock Company, Tunduk. So they reorganized from being just a private, being a government organization. Now they became private. So it's Open Joint Stock Company, and they should actually start working on actually earning money, because the main goal of every business is to make money. So now Tunduk has a different, let's say, different scenario, right? They have to build the Tunduk for the next level, provide services, earn money on this. So this is a bit different scenario. And then now all actually ministries should work with Yekazmat or Tunduk just to get any type of government initiatives. And this is, I think, not maybe the really right way, because now some private companies are actually challenging, saying that they cannot participate in some government tenders, because private companies and even some big tech companies are interested in building some infrastructure for the government. And I think this is a bit now a scenario when government from one side is using the money of donors and they attracting some local IT companies or big tech companies to make some projects. From the other side, they're just giving this work to these government IT agencies.
Thank you so much. And before we wrap up, just to say that we see that each one of the countries, they have their own best practices. And one of the incentives for us in StrategEast to set up this platform as a State and IT Eurasian Forum was to share the best regional and global practices. So I think that it would just another time demonstrate that the best things that are done here in Azerbaijan, in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan and countries which are not on this stage today, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, Georgia, should be shared in some way. And I think this one of the platforms where we do it. Thank you so much for coming and taking part. Thank you.